Welcome back to the Richest YouTube channel. Today's class we are going to learn how to make this beautiful yoke corset blouse. So it's a one-piece corset, as you can see, and it has this beautiful sleeve. We are going to be learning how to make all of this in this channel. I'm also going to be giving you tips on how you can make your one-piece corset for your regular off-shoulder corset, tube corset, or your slant shoulder corset. It's a very simple tutorial and it's beginner friendly. If this is something you like to learn, kindly stay tuned till the end of this tutorial. Thank you. Okay, so to make this pattern, I already drafted my basic bodies. This is the front bodies and this is the back bodies. So for the front bodies, I have my bustier dart here, this is the waist dart, and this is my shoulder dart. I have a detailed tutorial on how to make this on the channel already, so that was why I did it off camera. I'm going to link it down below in the comment section if you don't know how to. It's a very simple pattern and this is like a one-piece corset pattern, so I'm going to be teaching us tips on how we can adapt this to our regular corset pattern as well, both off shoulder and the one with shoulder. So let's just get right into it. So it's very simple to make. Actually, the first thing you need to do is to mark your neck depth. So for my neck depth, I'm going to mark from my shoulder point to where I want it to be. This is a V neckline, so I want it to be around 7 inches, and then for the width, I want the width to be 3 inches. Don't want it too wide. So after marking it like that using my ruler, I'm going to connect my neck shape. This is my V neckline. Okay, so like I said, this is a corset and then it stops, so it has like a yoke and the yoke stops on the under bust. So this is the armhole, this is the bust point, and this is the under bust and the waistline. So it stops on the yoke. To create my cup, I'm just going to create the cup on the center front side. I'm going to leave the other side to just run straight like that. So I'm just going to bring my curved ruler now and then place it like this, linking my neckline to my under bust. So you can actually come in here by half an inch or quarter of an inch before you do this, but I want mine to be as V as possible. So I'm just going to draw my curve like this, so I can add my seam allowance to sew it back when I'm cutting on my fabric. So you can see how I have placed my curve. After placing it like that, I'm going to use my marker to mark it out, and this is what I have. So you have to be careful of how you place your curve depending on what you want. Actually, if you are using this type of curve now, if I place it, you can see that it is wider and it gives more room space. So depending on who you are making this for and what you want to achieve, your placement of curve actually matters a lot. So if you want it wider, you can see that this will give you something wider. Okay, so now like I said, this is the cup shape, and then I'm going to leave the other side to run like this. So this is going to be the yoke, and from the under bust downward is going to be the lower part. So I'm just going to detach the lower part from the yoke. So I'm going to cut like this, and then when you get here, you cut it following the curve shape that you have up to the neckline point. Okay, so this is what the lower part looks like. So if you want to have a seam here, you can just cut off the dart, but for me, I don't want to have a seam. So using my masking tape, I'm just going to go ahead and close the dart by just folding it on each other, and then I'm going to close it up using this masking tape. So now this is what the lower part looks like. Now we are going to work on the yoke. So for the yoke, I'm going to cut my V neckline. Okay, so after cutting my V neckline, like I said, this is like a one-piece corset. So I'm going to cut my dart, my under bust dart like this, and then after cutting my under bust dart, I'm going to close my shoulder dart so that I can transfer the dart that I have here to my under bust as well. So to close it, you just need to fold the dart on each other, the dart legs, just like we did for the lower part. So this is me folding it on each other like this, and automatically it will transfer your dart to your under bust. So after folding it, I'm going to hold it with my masking tape as well. So this is what the upper part looks like, and this is what the lower part look like. So when we are cutting it, we're just going to cut like this so that you can just fold it over like this and then you're going to sew it. So for the back pattern, I have my back pattern here like this already as well. So what I'm just going to do now is to create my yoke as well. So for the yoke, it's going to stop around where my front yoke stops, because I'm using contrasting fabric so that they can match. So for my front yoke, it stops around my underbust, which is 13.5 inches. So here I'm going to mark the 13.5 inches from my shoulder, and then this is what it looks like. So that I don't have double lines, I'm just going to note it on the side, okay? Or you just use your mark. So I'm going to use my pencil so that we don't get confused. So that is where my underbust line stops. So now the depth of the yoke at the center back is going to be, depending on what you want, you can leave it at 10 inches, 11 inches. So for me, I think I'm going to leave it at 10 inches, which is around my bust point area. So I'm marking this here, and then using my ruler, I'm going to connect from here to my 13.5 inches under bust line. So have this V shape that we have here. You can see what we have there, okay? So now that we have this, I'm just going to extend this to my zipper allowance as well, and then this upper part becomes my yoke, and then this lower part, what the lower part is going to look like. So now, just like we did for the front, I'm going to cut this out, and the neck depth that I use for this is 3 inches by 1.5 inches. So here again, I'm going to close up my dart because I don't want to have any seam line there. So I have closed it. I'm going to use my masking tape to use it. So you can label this your back while you label the other one your front, although it's quite obvious, okay? So now for the back yoke as well, I'm going to close up this tiny dart, so to make it easier for me, so that I don't have anything. You will close it like this, it may not lay flat very well for you, so you can see what you have. So here I'm just going to measure what I have on my shoulder and divide that by 2, and then I'm going to connect it like this. So after connecting it, I'm going to slash open this dart and sort of close it back, okay? So now I'm going to close the dart back like this, okay? So using my masking tape, you can see now that the dart is closed as well. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to go ahead and cut. You can see now that it matches all of this on my fabric, and then I'm going to bring it back to show us how to sew it. So I'll set this aside and then work on the tips that I talked about. So I'm going to show us how we can make a one-piece corset using this type of pattern, so that you don't have, remember we had different type of corsets. We have 2-piece corset cup, basically we have 2-piece, we have 3-piece. So I'm going to teach us how we can make a one-piece corset cup as well. So I'm just going to rush through this. I already have my pattern just like I had earlier. So just like we do, you determine the depth of your corset. So now let's say I'm maintaining this depth that I have here, which is my armhole depth. So at the center front here, remember we used to have a gap between the corset, so it can be half an inch, can be 0.75 depending on what you want. I'm working with 0.75. I'm going to maintain that measurement for my bust point as well. This is the armhole, this is the bust point. So after doing this, what you need to do now is to make this into a straight line, and then you take your curved ruler and then connect it to your under bust, okay? So this is just for the regular corset, because I've had this request a lot, but I've not had time to film the tutorial. So I'm just going to show us quickly. So if you want a more detailed tutorial on this, you can let me know in the comment section. So after making this side, on the other side as well, I'm going to mark around 1 inch, okay, and 1.5 inch or 2 inches. So this already has a pattern, or as an allowance, it has a 1 inch allowance. So after that allowance, I'm just going to mark around 1 inch inwards like this, and then I'm going to take my curved ruler again and then connect for the other side. So this is what I have. You can see now that we have our cup already. So for a corset with shoulder, what I'm going to do now is to open one of these dart leg so that I can close my shoulder dart. So I'm going to cut this up to my bust point. Then after cutting it, I'm going to go ahead and close my shoulder dart. Okay, so after closing the shoulder dart, I'm going to hold it down with a masking tape, and then I'm going to measure my shoulder. Okay, the shoulder strap that I want for this corset. So from this outer part, you measure your shoulder strap. It can be 2 inches, can be 2.5. So let's say I'm working with around 2 inches. So once you have it there at this center point here, or anywhere you want, depending on how much you want it opened, from my bust point area, I'm going to measure the height. So this height is very important because this is what determines how much cleavage you are going to show. You can measure it from the upper part as well, or you measure from this point. So if you're measuring from the upper part, I usually use between 6 to 6.5 inches. So from your bust point, that's going to be around this is going to be around 4.5 inches thereabouts. Okay, so let's say this is what we have. Now for the neckline, I'm going to connect from my neck depth like this, in form of a V, in form of a sweetheart neckline. And then the next thing I'm going to do is to connect from here all the way to my shoulder point. So that is basically what you need to do. After doing all of this, now I'm going to cut out my dart. Okay, and then I'm going to cut out the neckline as well. So you can see now that you have your corset pattern, and this is just going to be one piece. Okay, so this is just going to be one piece. So to sew this, all you just need to do now is to cut out your corset. Okay, you cut out your cup just like this. Then after cutting out your cup, you cut it on your fabric, and then you go ahead and place it like this, and then you sew up to where this stops. So I'm just going to hold it with the masking tape so that we can see what it looks like. Okay, so I have held it with my masking tape, as you can see. So carefully, I'm just going to bring out this cup. Remember, this is a paper. Okay, so you can see the depth that we now have for our box, and you can see that this cup is just a single piece. It's not divided into 2 or 3. So after sewing your lower part together, you're just going to insert your cup just like this. Okay, I hope you understand that. If you want a detailed tutorial on cutting and sewing this type of corset, like I said, let me know in the comment section. And if you want it to be like an under, like an off shoulder, just like you do your normal off shoulder or tube corset, so instead of having a shoulder like this, you're just going to connect it like that, and then you cut it off. So once you cut it off, you also have your one piece corset, and then this is what it's going to look like. Okay, so that is that about the tip I talked about. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut our main bodies on the fabric. So I have gone ahead to cut them out on my fabric, and you can see this part. You can see how I just cut out my dart. Like I said, it's just a one piece corset, and we're going to be sewing it like that. I'm sure you might have seen that type of pattern, especially the one with shoulder on bra designs. Okay, so this is what the yoke look like, and then I added my necessary allowances. So this is the yoke for the back as well. I cut 4 for each because I'm going to be fixing lining to this. So this is my back, and this is the lower part for the front. You can see my allowances here as well, and then this is for my back. So I have side seam allowance for the back, unlike the front, because my front pattern already has a side seam allowance, but my pattern was not enough to add allowance for the back. So that was why I added it on my fabric. So now to sew it, what I'm going to do now is to start detaching my pattern from my fabric, and then I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and close the dart. Okay, remember we already closed the dart for the lower part, so we don't need to close the dart. I'm just going to close that for the front. Okay, so if you want to pad this with maybe a soft stitch, you just need to iron it on it before you close this dart. So I'm just going to place it on each other like this, and then sew it close. So I'll do this for all my 4 patterns. Okay, for the back as well, the dart is closed, so I don't need to close any dart. So I'll go ahead and do this. Then after doing this, now what I'm going to do now is to place each of them on each other like this, and then I'm going to turn the neckline and the armhole. So I'll sew the neckline closed like this. I'm going to sew the armhole, and then I'm going to leave this lower part. Remember, I'm still going to sew this to the lower side of the bodice. Okay, so I've gone ahead to sew them together, and you can see I just held my dart here. So while sewing your dart, you can just come up from where your seam stop, your opening stops. You can just come up by 1/4 of an inch or 1 inch like this, and then you sew your dart. So now I have sewn this for both my main fabric and lining, and you can see the depth that we have now. So this will prevent your bust from going flat. So you can see that the bust now has room space. So after sewing it, I just lay the front and back on each, the lining and the main fabric on each other, and then I sew my neckline, I sew my armhole as well, and then I sew a little bit of the side because I want this to be neatly finished. So if you're not using a lining for yours, all you just need to do is to make sure you serge all of this, then you turn your neckline with probably a bias, and you do the same thing for your armhole if you are not fixing a sleeve to it. So this is what I have. So I'm going to notch all the corners that I have, just like my armhole, so that I can relax well, and then I'm going to turn everything out. So this is the first side for the front, and this is the second side for the front. So for my back as well, remember I have already closed the dart. So what I just did was to lay my lining and main fabric, and then I closed the center back, my neckline, the armhole, and the side. So I'm going to notch where necessary and also turn this out as well, so that I can give it a good press. Okay, so I've turned it, and this is what I have. These are my 2 back yokes. Okay, you can see now that it is neatly turned, and these are the front yokes. So for the front, please make sure you iron this properly. Place it on your bust hem, iron the bust area very well. Ironing is very important, so make use of your iron. So this is what I have for the 2 front yokes. So now I've removed the pattern on my lower part, and then I'm going to go ahead and just sew it to, just sew the yoke to the lower part, just like this. Okay, so now I'm going to place it like this. You can notch the center point so that you can match it together. So you place the center point against each other, and then you sew it. So what you're just going to do is to sew this to this and sew this to this as well. So after sewing it, I'm going to use the lining. Remember I said I cut 2. I'm going to use the lining to also turn it out neatly, just like I did for the main bodies. So I'll go ahead and sew this now. So this is for the back, the front, and then for the back I'm going to bring in my back yoke as well, and then I'm going to sew the back to the front. So you can see this is what the yoke looks like. So I'll go ahead now and sew my back yoke to the back yoke to the lower part of the back as well. So I have gone ahead to sew it. As you can see, this is what it looks like, and this is what it looks like on the inner part. So the excess that I have on this side is to turn the lower part neatly as well on the side area. So this is what we have. I'm yet to turn the back because I want to use this to sew the shoulder part neatly as well. So after sewing it, this is what we have. If you're not adding lining, you just need to serge this part. You can see that your neckline is already neat, but for me, I'm just going to bring in my lining now, and then I'm going to use it to clean up this part. So I'll just flip it like this, and then I will sew it so that I can neatly conceal these rough edges. Okay, so after doing that, I'm going to lay my front and back against each other like this, and then from the back, remember the waist side of the back is not closed yet, I'm going to bring in the front just like this, and then I'm going to flip it so that I can also show my shoulder. So we've been doing this severally, so I'm sure we know how to do. So by the time we sew the shoulder and then return it, the shoulder will also be neatly finished. Okay, so I have joined the shoulder. You can see how neat the shoulder is as well, and then I have turned the front, so you can see how neat it is. Maybe a bit tedious because it's tiny here, but you just make sure you walk around it. So I have joined the lower part of the back as well. You can see what I have. So now the next thing I'm going to do now is to lay the front and back on each other. So you see that the underbust area of the front and back, it have to match. So I'm going to lay the front and back and then sew it with the allowance that I left. After sewing it, you install your zipper on your center back and then you fix what you want to fix to the half length. It can be a flare and you can make it a pencil dress. So I'll go ahead and join the side seams together now. Okay, so I have sewn the side seam now, and this is what we have. So now we'll move quickly to the sleeve. The sleeve is just a simple sleeve and it doesn't go around the hem. That was why I made sure to turn the hem hole area neatly. It's just going to be laid on the shoulder area. So for the sleeve, depending on how wide you want it to be, but just make sure you need it to have enough room space for the hem to move. So the length is going to be my elbow length, and you can see I have 11 inches here, and then the width is going to be how wide you want it to be. So I have 20 inches. I had 20 inches, but I've gone ahead to turn it. You can see that I cut 2 of it. That's 20 inches by 11 inches, and then I place them on each other and then used it to turn each other out. So after turning it out, you're just going to have a rectangular shape like this. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to just fold it on both sides like this. So I'm going to be folding it by around 3.5 inches on both sides. So 3.5 inches on both sides, and then I'm going to iron it. So now this crease line, after ironing it, this part is where I'm going to be sewing to my shoulder. Okay, so it's going to be like this. Remember, you are folded in. This is the folded part, so it's going to be like this. You place this on your shoulder. Okay, so you can see the crease line here. I'm just going to take this now, the upper part here, I'm going to match it to my shoulder here. You can see it. Then I'll open it out and then sew it down by around maybe 5 inches on this side. Then after doing this to the front, you go over to the back as well, where you the 3.5 inches on that upper part, I'm going to match it to where I sew for the front as well, and then I'm going to sew it down by the same 3.5 inches, and then the hem is just going to come out. The hem is going to come out from the under part area here. That's why it is important for you to make sure that your armhole is neat, because the sleeve is not sewn to the armhole directly. So now once you sew this, now this part is going to be opened, and this is what you have, and this is what the sleeve is going to look like. Okay, so I have gone ahead to sew my sleeve. You can see by the time I open it out now, just like I explained, I ironed the 3.5 inches inward, and then I placed it from the shoulder. So I just sew around 5 inches downwards. So you can see this is the front, and I did the same thing for the back now. So when you flip it, this is what it looks like. You can see the sleeve now. Okay, so this is your armhole, and this is where your hand comes in. So here, this is just going to fold inwards. So this part now, you can either tack it here, or you can just leave it to fly. So the same thing you have done to this sleeve here. Okay, let me just put it down so that we can see it well. Okay, so this is our sleeve. Okay, you can see the sleeve here. This is where your hand is going to come out from, and this is the armhole. It has to be neatly finished. If you did not line it like this, you need to turn it with your bias, because your sleeve is not going to go around the armhole, and you don't want it to be looking rough. So this is where your shoulder is going to be, and this is what the sleeve looks like. So you just do this for the other side as well, and your outfit is ready. You can see how beautiful this is looking and how neat it is. So like I said, it is actually not very easy to turn this part neatly. Okay, so especially for beginners, you can just serge it instead of turning it with lining. I couldn't record it because the video is already very long. So if you know you cannot turn it here, you can just turn your yoke, and then after sewing your yoke to it, you just serge it neatly, since it's not going to show on the neckline because the yoke is already turned, and that's where your neckline is. So now I'll take this to the mannequin so that we can see what it looks like. Okay, so this is what the dress looks like. You can see this is the yoke, and this is the dart that we took on the yoke side. So you just need to give this a very good press. This is what it looks like, and then you join your lower part to it to make it a full dress. So this is the sleeve. You can see that the sleeve is very simple to make, and it's really beautiful. You can see the hem comes out from the lower part like that, and this is what it looks like on the upper part. I hope you enjoyed making this beautiful tutorial with me. If you enjoyed it, let us know in the comment section. Like, comment and subscribe to our channel, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.